I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite baits, one of my most productive baits. It's this bladed jig or the ChatterBait. Now this thing is a fish catching machine. I think a lot of people thought when it first came out that it was a gimmick, that it wasn't going to be something that was around for a while. This thing puts fish in the boat all year round. Now a couple of things that I'd want to talk a little bit about are the trailer, where to throw it, and whether or not to use a trailer hook. I get that question quite a bit. Now for me, the trailer, I'm using one of three different trailers. I'm either using a cross style bait, I'm using a paddle tail bait, or I'm using this basic straight tail minnow style bait. And the one that I use more often is this minnow style bait. It's that straight tail. I use it in the spring, I use it in the summer. I think it's just something that's out the back of the bait. I think it looks the most natural. So what I do, no matter what trailer I'm using, is I do just thread it on. So I'm just going to thread it on that hook in full, put it in through the nose here, and thread it on and make sure it's lying nice and straight. Now that's incredibly important. You need to make sure no matter what trailer you're using that it's lying perfectly straight out the back. Otherwise you're going to have that bait roll. It's not going to track true. The other thing that I do, because I do put a whole bunch of action into my bait as well, that I'll talk about in a second and where I throw it, is I put a little bit of super glue right on the nose, so right on the tip of my trailer, so that it's going to stay in place. In terms of where I'm throwing my ChatterBait, I'm throwing it in the thickest cover I can find. Whether it's wood, whether it's grass, it really excels in that area. So grass, for me, I'm able to throw it in there. I'm going to be able to bring it through the grass, get it hung up, and really pop it off nice and hard. That's probably where 90% of my bites come. Now I think that this bait, a lot of times people think it's a substitute for a spinner bait. I think it's a substitute more for a square bill crankbait or a crankbait in general. And one of the keys, if I'm going to be looking for a bite, is it needs to be an ambush bite. I really feel like that's important. I don't think it's like a spinner bait where a fish is going to chase it for a long ways. I think it's going to be an ambush bite. That's why I think grass is important. You'll be blown away at how weedless this bait actually is. That's also why I think brush or stumps are important, because it's something that it can come by, fish can come out and ambush it. So that's kind of what I'm doing with my ChatterBait. In terms of a trailer hook, I never ever use a trailer hook with my ChatterBait. And again, that's because it's not a spinnerbait. You know, the ChatterBait, like I said, I'm throwing it in thick cover. If I'm putting a trailer hook on my ChatterBait, it's going to get caught up. It's really going to take away from the action, and it's going to take away what it's designed for. In terms of line, I'm usually throwing it on 17-pound test fluorocarbon. Typically throw it always on fluorocarbon. 15 to 20 pounds, 17 is usually where I am. And then for me as well, in terms of the rod, I'm using a rod that's a lot like a crankbait rod. So it's got a fair bit of tip. I really want that fish to be able to eat my ChatterBait, load the rod up, and then I can lean into them. I catch about 95% of the fish that bite the ChatterBait, and I think that soft tip rod is really, really important. Lets them get it, and I have this ChatterBait halfway down their throat most of the time. So keep those things in mind next time you're on the water. Don't be afraid to pick up the bladed jig. It's an awesome bait no matter what time of the year, and it gets a big bite.